What is Kamiq? Apparently, in the language of the Inuits, the people who inhabit the northern parts of North America and Asia, Kamiq is something that fits you like a glove. So, who does the new Skoda crossover fit? Watch this to find out. Skoda Kamiq is a B crossover. If it looks like a lifted Scala, you're on the right track. The Scala may be almost a compact car in size, but as far as Kamiq's dimensions are concerned, it's really a B crossover, just like the KIA Stonic, the Nissan Juke or the Renault Captur. The Kamiq is 424 cm long, it has 265 cm wheelbase, it is 179 cm wide and 155 cm tall. At almost 19 cm, the ground clearance is 4 cm higher than in the Scala, and it is also 2 cm higher than in the larger Kia Sportage. Like the Scala, also the Kamiq is mostly toned down in terms of design, except the front, where you get squinted LED day running lights mounted above the headlights, just like in the Citroën C4 Cactus. Don't let the silver elements on the bottom of the bumpers and along the sills fool you. Like most crossovers these days, the Skoda Kamiq is front-wheel drive only. Higher ground clearance will help you deal with some obstacles as long as there is traction, i.e. there is no rain. I mean, come on. Why couldn't it snow at least? It's flippin' February. Where are the white bears? We're in Poland. The electrically operated tailgate is a €350 option or part of a comfort pack for some trim levels. If you want a double floor to get a flat cargo area, that will cost you €150. A 12-volt socket in the boot is part of a €200 Simply Clever pack. The 400-liter boot is not the largest in the class, which is surprising in case of Skoda. After all, Skoda is always about being the best in every category. The Juke and the Captur have larger boots, at least on paper. And the brother from another mother, VW T-Cross, has a sliding rear seat, which allows for the boot space to be expanded from 385 to 455 liters. I like large shopping bag hooks, which are really sturdy. You can do a lot of heavy shopping here and heavy lifting. You can close the tailgate with a key fob as long as you're not too far from the car, which I do find somewhat annoying. And there is unfortunately no gesture control, so no kick to close. However, in its press release, Skoda advertises something called tip to close, i.e. you just tip the tailgate and it should close. So I shall now try tipping it. Kinda, sort of. I didn't have to give it a fiver to close, right? There is good legroom and headroom in the back. The armrest with cup holders costs €150. The panoramic roof is an €800 or €900 option depending on the trim. It makes the interior feel much more spacious than it really is. 2 adults in the back are fine, but you don't want even a skinny teenager in the middle. USB-C ports are a €50 option. I spent some time in the back as a passenger. The seats are fine, but as far as the noise level is concerned, I ended up raising my voice a bit too much trying to talk to the driver. Oh, and the doors don't cover the sills. The cockpit in the Skoda Kamiq is generally well laid out, mostly comfortable. There are large door pockets, a place for your smartphone, a large infotainment system, but this is only a touch panel, unfortunately. However, basic climate controls can still be operated manually with buttons and knobs like we like. But if you want something more, you need to press the menu and all the settings pop up here, and if there was sat-nav, you just missed your exit. It turns out, once we get rid of this car actually has heated seats, which you can barely fine down here, and once you press them and start looking at the road again, you don't notice there's a little icon here which tells you there's also a heated steering wheel function, which is very nice, by the way, especially in cold weather like today. So you don't know that the steering wheel is actually heated until you press home, I think, yes, and then you have all this nice screen with things you don't know what they are for, and there is a tiny heated steering wheel icon down there, like they couldn't put it on the steering wheel or maybe down here next to the handbrake. What are these empty buttons for anyway? Speaking of which, the Kamiq still has an ordinary handbrake, which doesn't seem like a problem until you realize there is no auto hold function, which in turn is a nice thing to have in cars with automatic gearboxes. There are two cup holders, but if you want to use the armrest, you have to slide it forward, and then you only have one cup holder. Storage under the armrest is small, the glove box isn't particularly big either. The Amundsen SatNav on this 9-inch display comes with the virtual instrument cluster. That's a €1,200 option. With it comes the virtual assistant LoRa, which works in several languages should you want to ask for the nearest petrol station. I'd go with the Bolero infotainment, which has a smaller screen, but you still get SmartLink with access to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so you have good SatNav and voice commands anyway. The seats are comfortable with lumbar support adjustment. Optionally, you can have a power seat for the driver. In some markets, the Kamiq is offered with a 1.6-liter diesel as well as a 1-liter motor running on CNG. Power ranges from 90 horsepower for the CNG to 150 horsepower for the 1.5 TSI petrol. All the petrol engines come with a gasoline particulate filter. This test car is a 115 horsepower 1-liter TSI mated to a 7-speed DSG. It accelerates from 0 to 100 km per hour in 10 seconds, and WLTP fuel economy figures are between 5.5 and 6.8 liters per 100 km combined. I'm getting between 6 and 6.5, so it's on par with the official test results. People often say 3-cylinder engines produce unpleasant vibrations. This may have been the case in the past, especially for some brands, but it's not that noticeable these days. Here, in this car, vibrations are not a problem, but the engine sounds rough, especially when cold and when under hard acceleration. Sounds a bit like a diesel. The Kamiq with the 1-liter engine and DSG is a bit jerky when you want to take off fast. I suspect it's not the way it was designed, but rather programmed to limit emissions when the engine is under stress. Cars should not feel like this, and yet increasingly often they do, regardless of the brand. Once the Kamiq gets moving, I don't see anything particularly wrong with it. Soundproofing in the front is decent, the steering is relatively precise, albeit tad light, and the lane keeping assist, which is active, can sometimes be a bit too aggressive. Something pointed out to me by a potential buyer is how the blind spot monitoring system works. Instead of a tiny light on the reflective part of the mirror or a beeping sound, there is a flashing light on the mirror housing On the window side, it's visible but unobtrusive.
The suspension is quiet when it comes to driving over potholes. It is firm, the suspension, but I get the impression that on larger imperfections in the road, the car feels like it was on the verge of losing traction, not a pleasant feeling, so take it slow.
The Kamiq is easy to maneuver, visibility is fine, and there is a reversing camera that helps as well. This is one of those cars that are not very exciting, but at the same time, good enough. Prices of the Skoda Kamiq start at €18,290 for the active trim with a 95 horsepower 1-liter TSI engine and a 5-speed manual gearbox. This test car in style trim with a 115 horsepower TSI motor and DSG with a few options costs about €32,000. A similarly spec'd Renault Captur is about grand cheaper. But it gets more interesting when you go to town with the Kamiq. The Monte Carlo trim with a 1.5 TSI motor, DSG and everything you can specify costs about €36,500.
First of all, this shows that 32 grand configuration with a smaller engine doesn't make much sense. Secondly, bear with me here, I configured a similarly spec'd BMW X1. I know it's slightly bigger on the outside, but not much bigger on the inside. BMW X1 starts at €33,000 and with the same options like the Skoda, it costs about 46 grand. Of course, you can have the BMW with more powerful engines, all-wheel drive and many other options. However, for me the Kamiq is just enough. To a point I could say it fits like a glove. And how do you find a Skoda Kamiq? Does it fit you like a glove? What other B crossovers are you taking into account? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, subscribe to Marek Drives. That's me. And hit the notification bell to be notified every time I post. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. And I think I should bring a hairdryer. Shouldn't I? Yeah, next time I will.